hair tutorial, I'm going to share with you how to do cutting and styling on short relaxed hair. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start placing our hair extension into Abigail's hair. So this is the extension that we're using, and this is human hair extension. I've went ahead and added some color to this. So the natural color on this was a combination of a golden blonde with a white blonde. What I added on here was a rose gold semi-permanent color. So I believe it was the crazy color in rose gold that I applied to here. So we're going to apply a few tracks. So when we're working with hair extension, when we're applying this technique, we know it as adding tracks into the hair. So essentially you either work with one line off your weft, or you can add this as a double. The technique that I'm going to use also involves having to use glue. Because Abigail's hair is on the shorter side, it's much more easier to apply this by using the bonding glue, which is this one here. So this is the bonding glue that I'll be using for attaching the extension itself. So when we attach this, we're actually going to be placing it just past the root area, close to the root, but not directly onto the scalp area. I'm going to be applying possibly around 6 to 8 lines of this. So when I add this, I will decide how much more lines we need, because you only go by what the hair looks like as you're actually adding the hair itself. So this is the extension that I'll be adding, and that'll be added around the top area where we left the hair slightly longer, and we're keeping the sides nice and short. So what you're going to need for this process is a pintail comb. Is likely going to make things easier in terms of the application of creating the sectioning that you need for applying the hair. I will be leaving a little bit of the hair out around the front. So what we're doing is we're essentially just placing the hair extension in between about an inch to 1.5 inches of width of her own hair left out in between that as well. So I might add this a little bit more closely with the extensions, but as I get further to the crown area, I'm going to leave out a little bit more of the hair so we get a really nice blend. So when I do my sectioning, you want to see how the hair naturally falls, also based on how you've actually cut the hair itself. So the last thing you want to do is to go in with straight lines. You never do straight lines whenever you're applying extension in this way. You always work with slightly more of a curved sectioning technique, because if I go in with more of a curve, it means that I will have some of the extension falling directly towards the side area here, going towards the temple area. So we do want it to sit very nicely and looking as natural as possible. So the last thing you want to do is going in with straight lines, because wherever your straight line ends, starts and finishes, that's literally where your extension is going to fall. So if you add straight lines, you have extension falling in this direction here, but you're missing out all the other sides. So that's why we're going with a little bit more of a curved sectioning technique. I'm going to go ahead and start sectioning the hair and then getting ready to apply the extension. I'm also going to be using my dryer to help to set and dry the extension into place, because the heat allows the process of the glue to dry in a little bit more quicker versus trying to just place this and leaving it to try and dry by itself. Okay, so this is my first line here, and I'm going to go ahead and add my extension. So what I'll do is I will actually take my extension and then measure roughly how far I need that to be. Okay, so if I'm happy with how that's sitting, then I'll go ahead and position that. So I'll just cut out what I need so that I'm not having a long weft of extension to handle. And the next thing we're going to do is we're literally just going to be applying the glue along the weft here. So you don't want to put too much, but you don't want to put too little either. Okay, so I just hold the weft alongside my palm going down to my wrist there, and I'm just gently squeezing onto the glue and then just applying that, and then using the nozzle to spread along the weft at the same time. Okay, so once we apply this here, I'm going to use my dryer, keeping it on possibly I'll keep this on medium heat and medium airflow, okay? And I'm just going to gently dry over the glue, only for a few seconds, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a tacky kind of feel to the glue so it's not too runny, so that it applies and it secures that weft a little bit more quicker. So medium heat and medium airflow. Okay, so now when I go to apply this, I'll start from my left hand side, just gently place it on top of the hair, okay, and then press into it, and then continue all the way to the right hand side. I'll maintain the hold just around the corners there, and then I'll just use my thumb to just gently press down along the weft, exactly where I placed my glue, and then just press into that a little bit more. I will take my dryer and use that again, just blowing over that area. Just be mindful that you don't want to hold this for too long, because you don't want to cause any discomfort for your client because of the heat. So I'll just press into that a little bit more. Okay. So I will be careful with this as I go into the combing, as I just gently comb it down, because it still needs a little bit more time. Okay, so just comb that down gently, and then we'll go ahead and do our next line. Still the same technique, just comb down the hair and then see how the hair is falling and it's sitting. And then I'm just going to section out a small section of hair in between this here, okay? The same as I did, I'm still maintaining that slight curving of my sectioning as I go along here, going a little bit more further towards the back there on my right hand side, because I just want to make sure that we get that nice extension covering that. And then I'll come through here to the left hand side and repeat the same process, just bring that in a little bit further, making sure that I'm leaving hair that I want to cover the last section that I did just there. Okay, so her hair is short as we get further up to the top. I'm just mindful of that. So this next line here that I'm going to do, I'm actually going to do it as a double. So I'm going to place my first weft here, and then on top of that weft I'm going to put another one. So essentially it will end up being like a double track instead of a single one. Sometimes you might want to do this technique of layering your wefts so that you don't put too many lines. So instead of having so many lines of weft in there, you could essentially have just 4 lines, but you have a lot of hair because you've layered the weft on top of each other. Okay, so the next section, again, I'll just measure out what I want. Keeping in mind, I don't want to bring it too far out. We still need a little bit of hair left there. So I'll just leave about an inch from the point where my line stops, and then just start from more on the inside and bring that around again, measuring how much I need. So if you just turn your head for me, let me just see where that is. So I will bring that in a little bit more, and then just checking the other side if you turn the side for me. Okay, so I'm happy with the length that I have there. And then I'll just cut off what I don't need. And it's the same process in terms of how we apply our glue onto the hair. Just take your time, just squeeze it gently, especially if it's a new bottle. You might find that if you squeeze it too hard, you'll have a lot of the glue coming out. And I will mention that if this goes on your clothes, it can be a little bit tricky to come out, especially if your clothes are not black like my top that I'm wearing here. So just be careful that you don't get the glue on your clothes. Okay. Again, I'll start from my left hand side if you turn your head slightly for me. And then I'll bring it round to the right. Then I'm just pressing down into that weft as I did before, Sometimes you might need to just hold for at least 10 seconds or something, but if you've done the pre-drying as I did just before I placed this, it should secure a little bit more easily. And then I'm going to go ahead and dry over that just slightly. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and continue the process of applying the extension around the head here. And once I get around the top here, then I'll show you guys in terms of how you just finish placing that extension. So I'm going to go ahead and apply about 2 more lines, which I will make as a double. So this one here, as I mentioned before, I'm going to double over that weft. So we don't waste any of our wefts. I'll just use these 2 that I had cut off to create the length that I wanted for the first one and for the second one. So they just about measure up to the length that I need. This one I just need to cut off just a little bit here. So I'll start with placing this one first. I'll just cut off this little bit that we don't need sticking out in the hair. So I'm just going to go ahead and do one more line, which is going to be a single, and then I'm just going to check over how that's looking. If I need to add another 2 smaller single lines just to get right close to the crown area there, that's what I'm going to go ahead and do now, because we need to make sure that we don't end up putting too much hair extension that don't sit and match what we have with the volume of her own hair as well. So I've gone and completely added my tracks into the hair. I ended up putting a maximum of 5 lines in here. We still have that one double track that I created where I overlapped another weft on top of the other, but the rest of the 3 that I added at the top, they're just single extension weft that I put in there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, we're just going to cut this down here. I'm aiming to just keep this in line with the top of her eyebrows. I'm not looking to make it any shorter than past the, or just above the middle part of her forehead. So I'm just going to be working with just the top part of the eyebrow to guide me here. I can always go in and cut this a little bit shorter. So what I'm going to do is just doing this twisting technique so that when I razor cut this hair, it will just create a little bit more feathering and layering into the hair as well. So this is one of the tools that we actually use when we cut hair extension, specifically similar to the one that I'm using here. It gives us more of a feathered finish technique instead of trying to use your scissors, because your scissors on this type of hair extension is going to create more like a blunt cut. It's not going to give you a nice feathered finish that you might get when you cut real hair. Okay, so even though this is human hair, we find that with our scissors it doesn't really create the finish that we want to see in there. So I'm just gently just smoothing this over the hair. Okay, being mindful not to press too hard, and also being mindful of how much length I want to retain in the cut itself once it's done. So once the hair is cut with this, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be slicking her own hair at the back there. So I'm going to be using a foaming wrap lotion technique, where I will use my mousse to wet the hair down slightly and slick it down. And I'll use a combination of some of my edge control product to help to keep the hair slicked down as much as possible. So around the sides here, I'm going to work with this part of the head here as my guide, so that I know roughly where I want the hair to stop. Just going in the direction of where the hair is falling here, okay? So I'll leave this as it is for now, but if I need to cut into it a little bit more, I will do that, okay? So you're always checking to see, is it falling and sitting the way that you want it to sit? Do you need to cut in a little bit more into it? Is it blending in with the hair? So I'm just going over the top here and just creating some layers into the hair to blend in with the top part of her own hair, seeing as it's a little bit more shorter than the extension that we were putting in the hair. We still want this to just have a natural feel and look to it when it's finished. So at the same time, this method of cutting is thinning out the hair. So if it feels bulky in any areas, I'm just working through with my razor to allow me to thin out some of the hair just a little bit. Okay, so I'm happy with how this is looking right now. So we've got a nice layer going through the hair there. We've got a nice shape and length, and it's blending in nicely with her own hair as well around the top. So just allow the client's hair to guide you as to how much you possibly want to cut. And you're always stopping and checking. So when I kind of fluff this up and lift it, I'm just seeing how the layering that I've created works with the length of her own hair as well. And then this helps me to see areas where the hair is a little bit longer, and I can go in and add a little bit more layers. So just be mindful that you don't get carried away with the cutting, because it's very easy to kind of lose yourself a little bit and you might end up cutting more than what you might need to. So I'm just checking this area again, just going over that just to make sure it's all blending in nicely. So you always comb the hair in different directions of possibly, if the client decides to push the hair back a little bit, is it going to sit, is it going to blend in with their own hair, should they wish to do that, so that at least when I comb it forward, we still have a nice layered effect towards the front there. But if we comb it slightly towards to the back, it will still sit and blend in with her own hair a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to continue and tidy up that hair a little bit, just checking it to see how it's sitting. Okay, so I'm happy with how that's looking and how that's blending. So the next thing I need to do is to actually wrap set her own hair. If I just turn you to face the other way. Because with our short textured, relaxed hair, should I say, it's much more easier to keep it nice and sleek. So with our relaxed hair, it's much more easier to keep it nice and sleek instead of trying to blow dry, because the hair is so short. It's not going to blow dry very sleek. So we need to use our products to help us, to aid us with the process. So I'm just reapplying a little bit of my heat protecting product that will work to heat protect and moisturize the hair, and starting to place the hair in position. And we just use this product to just create that sleek finish here. So with this, you can either place the person under the hood dryer if you have time. If you're in a setting where it doesn't permit you to do that, you're just going to apply the product into the hair. You're going to brush it down as smooth as you can with your Boa Bristol brush, which I'll show you shortly. And you can still place the do-rag, and then just using your hand dryer, you can just give yourself maybe 20 minutes to just lightly blow dry over the hair. Now, because Abigail's hair was freshly relaxed before we went ahead and did the cut, we're able to really achieve that very nice sleek finish on the hair. So I can still go ahead and finish this with just my hand dryer without having to use the hood dryer. So there is an option, but if the hair wasn't freshly relaxed, it'll be a little bit more difficult to really achieve that finish. So this is my double-sided boar Bristol brush. I'm just using the hard side, and I'm just going to gently brush the hair down into the direction that I want it to fall. Okay, so this is always kind of like the finish that we want to see on our short pixie cuts when we're setting the hair. So when the hair dries in this state, we still have the option of brushing out the hair and actually styling the hair with maybe a small tongue or some straighteners if that's what we want to do. But we get the benefit of just being able to wear this as a style, and it does make it easier to maintain and manage when it's more sleek anyway. Okay, so you just brush that, and if you need to add a little bit more of your mousse to help you with sleeking the hair a little bit more, that's what we're going to go ahead and do. Okay, so at this point I would go ahead and apply my do-rag on the hair. I just turn you around to the side. So I'll just press that to make sure it's nice and smooth onto the head. One thing I'll note is, before I make that mistake, is that in between the do-rag there's this like ridge effect from where it's stitched together. Because we want that flat finish on the surface here, I'm going to place this inside out. So that area here is on the outside, and the seam is more on the inside where it's completely flat, so we still maintain that flat finish that we want to see on the hair. So that's one thing I'll mention about certain do-rags that have that middle stitching that creates a little bit more of like a ridge that could affect how the hair styles and finishes. So this is just going to be tied. So if I was placing her under the hood dryer, she'll be going under the hood dryer for at least 35 minutes to 40 minutes. But if we don't have time for that, we can just slightly use our hand dryer, so our hair dryer, should I say, sorry, and you're just going to dry that for at least about 15 to 20 minutes just at the back. The top part here, I didn't put any of the foam, so it's not actually wet, so we can go ahead and style that. Because this is just going to be kept slick anyway, even though it might not be 100% dry, if we manage to get it to 80% dry, we can still style the hair, because the focus of the styling is on this part of the head here. So we're going to go ahead and dry this out, and then once it's dried, then I'll come and I'll show you guys how I'll quickly style out the top front of the head, and then that'll be the complete finish of the style that we've been working on.